Well, it's November 1st, 2025, and time is flying like a horse in the Civil War running for freedom. And we are going to talk about mind hacking today. We're going to talk about dream engineering, and we're going to talk about a way to protect ourselves from intrusion into our own thoughts, into our own heads, into our brains by dark forces, many different kinds of dark forces. So, we're going to talk about neurorights. This term should have been all around for 15 years, but it's still secretive. The first time I heard this term was only a couple of weeks ago in a video in which Barry Littleton was being interviewed by Jessica Jones. And they were talking about some out of the box subjects, and neurorights came out of Barry's mouth. And I had to rewind the video because, like, wait, what? Neurorights? That's really cool. It's like the coolest science fiction topic to write about as a novelist. And yet here we are, it's 2025. We're living in a science fiction novel right now. It's a crazy world. So I want to introduce to you, in a snowstorm of inauthenticity that is our society, we have one single crystalline grain of integrity, of fire, of truth, of love, a man radiating the fire of authenticity in a world of falsity, a world of deceit, a world of bread and circuses, a world of fucking nonsense. Here we have Barry Littleton. We call him Barry the Man Littleton. Here he is.
What's up, John? Thank you for having me, man. Well, I'm never been to live up to that introduction. Just, just a strange brother's had some experiences, and hopefully can help a few people. You know what I mean? And I'll say I'm a jack of trade of many, but master of none. So I know by no means is this something that I'm an expert on or anything of that nature, but it's about bringing awareness to things and getting people to research it for themselves and then take action for themselves. Because when it comes to, the whole subject of neural rights and what's really being done to people being openly experimented on, that's all going to end up in the court. That's going to end up in the courts. That's the only place that any of these controlling parties can be held accountable. So that's what it's going to come out. And I think that that's what we're seeing starting to happen right now. Technology that can prove this is happening to people, where people can go in and actually, have a chance to defend themselves openly. I think that's really important. So,
Right. Well, I found the Neurorights Foundation on LinkedIn about a week ago, and I thought that I would invite the human rights lawyer from that foundation onto the show just to give us 5 minutes of legal talk about what sort of laws are being enacted, or what sort of laws that they're promoting, that the government enacts to help protect us from various forces who are interested in what we're thinking and want to maybe even copyright our own thoughts. And she didn't get back to me when I queried her about coming on the show. I also asked the director of European Affairs to come on from the Neurorights Foundation. He didn't get back to me. And I asked the executive director of the Neurorights Foundation to come on, and he didn't get back to me. So they were just going to come on as sort of, experts that could give us 5 minutes and to sort of pepper your testimonial, because you have a ton of intel, and you could fill 10 podcasts full of intel with your knowledge base, and I really appreciate you. So
thank you.
let's start out with one specific term. You talked about something called the sentient world simulation in a video called Implants that you did on your channel, Barry Littleton, on YouTube. Can you tell us about the sentient world simulation?
What that is that they're trying to actually build, like, there are several things going on. One is like an actual mind. They're trying to build a mind for Google, to put like Google into a mind frame, actually. And that world sentient is the same type of a situation, to where they're actually trying to make a completely simulated world. You know what I mean? In terms that is based on everything that is real, actual now. 3D things, but in this world simulation, it's everything that will be within cyberspace, so to speak. So, when you're dealing with the factors of programming other through neuroscience and things of that nature, you can put people into this world simulation. They wouldn't know it's any different. Similar to what you see on like the Matrix type of movies and things like that. It's so interesting. I years ago now did an interview with this lady that I used to work with sometimes, and she had Sophia Stewart on her show. And at that time, and still, I think there's issues with Sophia Stewart claimed that she wrote the Terminator and the Matrix, but there's some other guy said he wrote it too, and then there's James Cameron. So I don't know, that it all gets tied up in there. But during this interview, she had told me, I'd asked her, I can't remember what the question was, Jock, but she had said something very interesting. She said, in the Terminator, that showed how the machines took us third dimensionally out here in this world, how they warred with us and were destroying us in that way physically. So, but the Matrix showed how they took us in cyberspace, how they took us neurally, and then she started saying, and John Connor is actually Neo. They're the same character. And then she started saying, remember that John Connor stands for JC. And JC is, she's saying, when the machines take over, when the Savior comes back, he'll be JC still. See what I'm saying? So she's saying that John Connor in Cyberworld was technically Yeshua, a biblical deal. I'm not religious, but it kind of shocked me. I was like, whoa, when I started thinking about it. So maybe she did write it. But I mean, very interesting. We start looking at things like the world simulation, that whole program, and we start talking about things like these, like digital twins, like you and I were talking about earlier. Okay, people that are experiencing all this neuroprogramming, getting hit with directed energy weapons. That's a term that we hear a lot, but really some of these are actually targeted like dream incubation, things that activate the nanotechnology in us, the biosensors and semiconductors that are in our bodies that we all get exposed to all the time. And these target individuals have had that stuff activated. And then once it's activated, they can be hit with different frequencies. So that's a company I'll bring up. It's called Mind Nexus, run by Desiree Foley and this gentleman named Jesse Beltran. They have what's called nonlinear junction detection technology that they do scans with. And it will show what part of the human body is emitting unnatural frequencies.
Right. They've got this tech where they put the tech right within an inch of your skull, within an inch of your scapulas and your heart, and they can find these implants. And people are like, oh my God, I had 6, 8, 10 implants in my body, and they find it with this really sophisticated handheld device.
Mm-hmm. And what's cool is they're able then to detect those frequencies, and those frequencies can be traced back to their place of origin. And, when I started seeing some of that, in some of these places of origin, somewhere like the Intel Corporation. And I was joking around with you earlier, man, when I was a kid, Intel was like making the Merlin little hand devices and stuff like that. I never thought about what they were doing now in terms of implants and technology that's going to the next level, that. And another one I kept seeing was called Milsat. Anybody can look that up and look up the logo. That's military satellite communications, Milsat.com. And when I looked up what their budget was, it's $76 billion. That's a huge budget. And why are these frequencies going back to, so point being, people that are having these experiences can now get scanned somewhere, take that information and actually trace it back to who's doing it.
Right.
Okay. And then hold them accountable in court.
Right.
But that means people need to start declaring their cognitive rights right into your counter commission, okay, your counter treasury, and say that you're declaring your cognitive rights.
Right, because these implants are interfering with your biofield, and so it's not just your body; it's also your mind, and they can direct thoughts into your mind. They can talk to you, voice to skull. But you're saying that that the serial number of these implants, once you take them out of the body, that the serial number can tell us who made these things.
Well, it's actually the frequencies that they're emitting alone can be traced.
Oh, okay.
You know, and they're emitting from the body. Now, I know that my Nexus does have a way of actually removing implants too, and some of these are nanoscopic semiconductors and nanoscopic biosensors.
Like
You
really,
know that,
really
and
small, really
yeah,
small.
yeah, yeah. Beyond that, yeah,
Yeah.
almost pico. But you know
Okay.
that could be put in our food, in nano dust, anything like that. So what you've got is self-assembling technology that gets into the human body, then self-assembles and starts generating these frequencies. See, and they're receiving and also projecting as well. And that's stuff that can be scientifically proven right now. So
Right.
the people, that have had a lot of these, for example, 21 and back and these other experiences like that, they should be getting scanned and finding out how much of that is being induced in some type of a neurocognitive programming that is a hive mind type of a deal, brain to brain interfaces, computer to brain interfaces. That's where all this is going. And, we hear so much about AI and all that's a popular word now. I mean, tired of. God, I remember we just called them androids and robots and stuff like that. But now it's AI. And nobody even seems to remember that horrible movie about 1987, 88, 89 called AI with that kid. Anyway,
Well, you mentioned earlier about digital twins, and so let's this is so, to me it's so relevant. Let's talk about the scenario in which there's a gentleman who is a construction worker, let's say, who works in the Midwest. He's a regular guy. There's nothing unusual about him. He's just doing his best for his family. He's got two kids, 3 years old and 5 years old, and a wonderful wife. And he's a good guy. Everybody loves him. So one day he starts to have memories of fragmented memories of working in a secret space program, and he starts to talk about it. Now, tell me what a digital twin is in relationship to how these memories might have entered this fellow's consciousness.
the word people would Google would be digital twin cyborg. And what that is actually a copy of somebody, okay, that can actually have conscious memories downloaded into it. And when people Google that digital twin cyborgs, look at the ways that they say consciousness can be transferred into the digital twin. So you have a system of people being exposed with neuro weaponry, okay, targeted weaponry, and having experiences. And that took us into something I know takes us into something I know that you want to talk about, which is dream engineering. And it can also be targeted dream incubation. And what that actually is and it goes from things like us just getting something like suddenly you're craving Taco Bell you never eat because you're getting all these different commercials you're seeing about it and stuff on these quick clicks and stuff. All that is a way that they're reading preferences and also inducing them. So
Right.
that's the most minor way of engineering things like that. When you take it bigger, okay, this type of dream technology and this dream engineering that they're doing, targeted dream incubation, is where they're actually turning these dreams into memories, these induced dreams into memories, and the memories into reality. So in that way, anybody that's experiencing that, it's going to be 100% just as real as you and I talking right now. Okay. And then these people have all these experiences, and these experiences are then transferred consciously into the digital twin, the memories and things.
Right.
And then I believe what they're doing with these digital twins is they're sending them to Mars to colonize it, or will be. Okay. And in that way, I just want to cross reference this with something since you follow the work that Jessica and I have done. I give that poor woman these blind targets and she does not know what she's seeing and stuff, but she does really good with it.
Remote
And one of
viewer.
them, remote viewing, sorry.
Yeah.
One of these that's very, very prevalent here is that I gave her one that was, it's called TRAPPIST 1, the TRAPPIST 1 solar system. And what that is a solar system in, it's not Centaurus. Anyway, it's got 3 planets within the habitable zone. And there's one of them that's really active, and it was a remote view by a guy named Betty Bolton for Linda Moulton Howe. And I
Aquarius.
gave this to her. I wanted to see
Constellation Aquarius.
Aquarius. Thank you, thank you. And I wanted to see what she got off this particular planet. And when she's seeing in the data, she starts describing these high rises, and she started calling. She calls, "Is this the future?" And she goes, "I don't under. Where is this? What city is this? Is this the future?" And then she starts saying, "And what is it with the slavery, the open slavery?" And she kept harping on that again and again, and it came up in the data several times. So and then I'll take that and combine that with something like what William Tompkins had said, that was one of those government whistleblowers. He said that the Milky Way is a little more primitive than some of the other galaxies, and we're still dealing with slavery to a certain degree in this galaxy.
Right.
Okay, and I will take that and cross-reference that with somebody you and I both met. That was Tony Rodriguez. And when I first met him years ago, okay, and we were sitting there talking for our flight, and he started crying out, didn't know all of his story. And he started telling me his story. And, opposed to saying he was SSP, he kept saying he was a slave. He kept saying to me he was a slave and explaining these different ways he could kind of prove it. But you take all these and tie these together, how much of this is connected to the digital twins and them being used to terraform Mars or other places. And was Jessica seeing a civilization that was built by digital twins before it gets fully colonized by the normal population?
Right. So you're saying the digital twins are colonizing planets and doing basically hard manual labor that might be difficult and risky for the original copy or the original versions of the people who are still here on Terra in our nice life here, which is also a slave matrix, but a different sort of kind of slave matrix where it's more a thought control slave matrix.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that takes us into actually, which is interesting enough, a Star Trek concept. Going to the original Star Trek, The Next Generation, one of these episodes is one of the ones that I didn't like always, but now I see the reason for it. It's a gentleman by the name of Commander somebody comes to actually disassemble data and to build copies of him. He wants to simulate the technology and make copies of him.
Okay.
And, and Picard is saying that he's not the property of Starfleet, and they have a hearing about it. And what's interesting is Picard is talking to Guinan, one of my favorite characters, as she represents the Black Andromedan race from the Black women. That's very interesting, the dreadlocks. Anyway, we'll go to that another time. But she tells Picard that, imagine it, that you're going to have a whole ton of datas that can do all the work that people don't want to do.
These androids,
yeah.
Cyborgs or androids.
And then Picard started saying that many of them, that's becoming a race.
And
he started looking at her going, you're talking about slavery.
And
she's looking at him, don't you think that's a bit hard? He said, no, I don't think it's harsh. And so that's what that went on. And then when the Picard series happened just a few years ago, it starts off, the first scene was Data and Picard are playing poker in 10 forward. And Picard kind of looks out the window and he looks back at Data. He says, I didn't know we were orbiting Mars. And he looks back again and it blows up. And he looks back at Data and Data's just looking at him. And it turns out what it was on Mars on Star Trek is a thing called Utopia Planitia. And Utopia Planitia is the shipyards where all the ships are made for the Federation. Okay. And what the deal was that person from the Next Generation, that commander, had succeeded in replicating data later on. And there's a race of them that's working at Utopia Planitia, and they rebelled, and they're the ones that blew it up. So it was all about artificial humans getting rights. At least that part of Picard only went the first 2 seasons, and I fell off.
You're saying that these were androids in the show, but the digital twins you're talking about that you believe actually exist in our time, in modern time, are cyborgs.
Well, if you look up actually what the digital twins are and how they're constructed, the cyborg aspect would be any human factions that are incorporated in with the artificial. But I think more in the terms when I think of cyborg is the fact that they have conscious memories downloaded into them.
Right.
But what that does to the person that's being experimented on, they're going to feel there's other versions of them, whether it be one or multiple that they're calling alters.
Right.
things of that nature. And, this is just what I came up with, Jock, because I'm a lifetime contactee. And my contacts did not conform to the parameters I was watching my whole life in the media, is one of the reasons I came forward. But it does not conform with what the SSP stuff or none of that either. Okay, but I want to know why. Why the SSP thing suddenly just came out 2017, all
Right.
behind Andrew Basago, it seems like, who started, and all the stuff he talked about is now he got a whole bandwagon of people. Well, when
Right.
you start dealing with people, they're telling me, oh, I had a dream that this person was in it, this person, and we're like the main people of the exposure, the disclosure, and stuff like that. And other people are saying, oh my God, I had that dream too. That is a hive mind. That is hive mind exposure, what we've been talking about. Dream engineering into a mind, brain to brain interface, a hive mind interface, and the simulation of place you had just asked about. All this starts incorporating together. You know what I mean? And people, I think, are so interested in sometimes fantasy that they don't want to even go get these scans or things that are going to get can be backed up legitimately. We've got to get a little bit out of the fantastical stories, which may very well be true, especially when you're dealing with induced engineered memories. I don't doubt that at all, okay? But the fact is, something needs to be done so it stops, and the people that are doing it need to be held accountable. That's the whole neurocognitive law is about. So
Yeah.
that's my point of that. And right now, the fact that it can be proven, I think, is important, and people need to be supporting places like Mind Nexus, and seeing what they're doing and understanding. They're starting to get a lot more momentum, and they were just on the Joe Rogan show, so I'm sure a lot of people will hear about it and hear about these frequencies, and that starts the awareness. Kind of like Deep Space Nine when Odo went into the Great Link to cure it. He kind of went down and it all started going gold. The Great Link. I don't know if you watched that show, but it's just food for thought.
Cool. Well, I guess the golden light probably spreads from anybody who's awakened and trying to spread the word. So everybody's doing their best to get out, to climb out of this matrix, and whatever things that we find out, we're just going to share them and see what happens. And we're going to try our best not to be slaves to some kind of weird technology that's intruding on our very thoughts. Now let's take it back to this really nice, normal construction worker who starts having SSP memories or memories of being on other planets and doing wild stuff, maybe in the future, at least the future. It looks like the future to him, because here we don't have all these craft that can zip around the galaxy. So he's having these memories. How do they get the memories in him? Do they take him physically somewhere and start implanting him, or can they do it remotely from, 1,000 miles away?
I think they could do it remotely for a long way, and it's so interesting. I've had some clients that I found out it wound up being a part of one of these programs. And I hear something consistently from them and from other people that testimonies. They say, well, there's like another me. There's me, but then there's another me that can do all this stuff. It flies the ships. It builds the weapons. It's dealt with the hybrids. It's done this and that and all that stuff. You know what I mean? But I hear the same thing a lot. There's this other me, or like there are two other me's that do this stuff, and then there's me, and that there is when you start dealing with that whole digital twin concept, right there. You know what I mean? And in that way, I think, and since it can be done remotely through semiconductors and biosensors implanted throughout the body, it can be done through frequency, just like V2K is. Okay, and that's an excellent way to start dream engineering for people right there.
What's V2K?
That's that God to voice to God, the God to
Voice to
skull
skull.
technology.
Voice
Voice
to
of God is
skull.
like,
Voice
yeah,
to
yeah,
skull. Voice
voice
to
to
skull.
skull, yeah, and AKA Havani syndrome and things like that use the microwave audio spotlight to targeted people. So
Right. It's also called voice of God technology or voice to skull, and they
voice to
use it.
skull, yeah.
I mean, I suppose both sides use it, dark and good, and they'll put a voice of God into some soldiers, and God will tell them, or Allah will tell them, to lay down their weapons and surrender. And then they get, oh, okay, well, God just spoke to us. So, but it's not God. It's just some tech.
Well, if you think about dark forces and strategies, what they do, okay, and what they've always done is they use the voices.
Mm.
And if you know, and I got hip to that when I worked with juveniles for 2 decades. You know, mostly some at risk, a lot of offenders, and also mentally ill, some of them. And you know, the ones that would stop taking their meds, you ask them why. Sometimes they would tell you, you know, well, the voices told me to stop. You were poisoning me and stuff like that. And then things I started listening, you know, and those voices have patterns. And there's a gentleman now. I did a video about it a couple of years ago, and people started telling me you sound like Jerry Marzinski. So I looked this cat up, and boy, he's way better than me. That cat worked in the prison system, and he
Mm.
was talking about the voices. And he saw what I saw, their patterns. And these voices always say horrible things to people. So we've got like four components to ourselves, all right? We've got the mind, spirit, the body, and the negative self. And the negative self, so much of our energy goes into that's you know where we start talk some of our own voice that we think is our own voice saying horrible things to us. You're no good, you're this and that, all these negative things. Then we get trauma, and it fractures the negative self into these negative identities.
Mm.
And they react in a way that's negative to the self, as the way the spirit part of us that's positive, that's still in connection with the creator, is positive. It's an energy being too. All
Mhm.
right. But that part of us is positive, but the negative self is, and the spirit responds to situations in a way that are beneficial to the self. The negative identities react in a way that's negative to the self, but they can be uncreated just like they're created. The point being, without going too far into that, but the point is just that the voices use the negative self. It's already there brewing in us. So all they got to do is like, heck, you know, you've cooked, man. You're never supposed to pour water on a grease fire, right? But that's exactly what they're doing. We've already got that burning inside and they pour it in there. And it sounds like our own voice.
Mm.
And it's important I'm saying this because the voices are invisible, Jock. Just like our feelings are invisible. We see the reaction that they get and the effects, but they're actually invisible. Okay, the voices are invisible. That's something the dark forces have been using always. Now it's been amplified into technology. They're using voices to tear people up through technology and targeted weaponry. You know what I mean? It's the same dark crap, just being amplified on a different level. So anyway,
Yeah,
hopefully that
and
answers
so
that.
and voices are just one way that they can affect us. I mean, if they really want to, if they see us as a true threat to their agenda, we're talking about the ICC, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, or you could just say
Hold on, one more time. Which one was that with? One more time. Which was that?
the ICC, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, which is just all the corporations who are off planet and here, and they're all around the galaxy, and
Like the Empire?
they're basically, and they're keeping us in the dark, and they funded Elon's rocket program to make us think that rockets are the best we can do. They did that through NASA. They said, "Oh, we're going to have NASA donate some money to Elon." And so, whatever you call these, the dark side, like whatever you call the deep state, however you want to think about the deep state, whether you call it ICC or you call it the Illuminati or the Cabal or whatever you call it, they want to keep us in darkness, and they'll do anything to do that. They want to take us away from our power, and our main power is our consciousness, right?
Yes.
If Jessica Jones can remote view a planet that's way far away from here and tell you real details about this planet that goes around a dwarf star called TRAPPIST-1, then imagine what we can do if we really tap into the power of our consciousness. So they want to distract us from that. So then they can do it many ways. So the voices are just one way. So you've also talked about how the Earth is like an onion. You said it's layered dimensionally, and some of these beings are dimensionally within the Earth matrix still. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the Earth being dimensionally and frequency wise like the layers of an onion. Okay, and you know how many of those you can just go layer after layer before you ever get to the core, right? And you've got these different layers, these frequencies separate that you have different uh, beings that exist. And a book that I wanted to kind of bring up, and it's interesting, this has come up several times, that kind of the first time I had really heard a concept just explaining it very well. It's a book called The Only Planet of Choice. And it's by Philip Strimmer, and it's an old book, okay? And it's based on these channelings that this group was channeling of a group that was called the Council of Nine that kind of brought them to light. And what's interesting about this book is you've got a group of people that are asking the channelers, questions, and the Council of Nine questions. And one of them on there is GR. That was Gene Roddenberry. And that was before he did the original Star Trek series. And I find it interesting when I did some private work with Dr. Rudy Shields. He had told me when he was at one of the observatories working there that Gene Roddenberry would come up and eat lunch with him and all the astronomers. And he would have on his, he was a CHIP, California Highway Patrol officer. So he had on his uniform when he come eat lunch with him. But he would ask some questions like, what would it be like to go faster than the speed of light? And all these very interesting questions, Rudy said.
Well, right.
The planet of choice.
Just so people know, Rudolph Shield, Schild, they tell us on the internet that he is an American astrophysicist and emeritus research astronomer at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. But he's also the executive director of this Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, which is FREE, FREE is the acronym. So go ahead.
FREE is now changed to CCRI. And Rudy was also, before he retired, one of the head authorities on black hole theory. And he calls them MECOs, magnetically eternally collapsing objects. And he based that on the data he was getting from the observatory. So, I mean, that's, taking it to another level.
Right.
Anyway, in this planet of choice, this Council of Nine, they say that they come from the zone of cold. Okay, but then they also start to, and that's interesting because you and I have done some work together that came up, the zone of cold. But something about that they were saying, they call these other civilizations with the S, civilizations, and they talk about how many are on Earth, frequencies away from us. And they describe it almost being like that onion type of a type of faction. They give words like one of them was the civilization of Hova, Hoova, but these are Earth civilizations that are just a dimension or a frequency off from us. And that takes us into the concept of crypto-terrestrial hypothesis and all these other things like that.
Right. So Barry, you're saying that the Earth or Terra, our planet, it's not that we're in 3D and then the other dimensions are out there, which is oftentimes how I look at it. You're saying that all the dimensions are here.
Yeah. But I think it's both. You know what I mean? When you start looking at all that quantum entanglement and stuff like that, I think it's both. But I think that when dealing with the civilizations that are right here, some of those craft we're seeing like Foo Fighters and things like that. Think about it, Jock. When we actually detonate something like that's based on a hydrogen molecule, a hydrogen bomb, it's going to rip through the dimensions. We've heard that. I've heard it matters how many dimensions, probably all of them. So you might be on one of these civilizations of Earth that is somewhat utopian-like. Then all of a sudden, boom, all Australia blows up. What? You know what I mean? You're going to send a bunch of investigations to that dimension that did that, the originator of that. They're going to be tears within the fabric space of time. You could call them rifts or whatever. All sorts of stuff can come through those rifts without having the technology to do it anyway. Just beings that are capable of changing frequency slightly, like we're seeing Sasquatch doing.
Right.
Some types of Sasquatch.
We've got video of little UFOs zipping around nuclear warheads. And then we discover that every single nation has had their nuclear capability dismantled, that the nuclear war threat is just a stage show to keep people entertained and distracted from the real things going on. Because the ETs who are the extra dimensional beings who felt the reverberations of our atomic tests are like, hey, you're not doing this anymore.
I have many contacts. I would ask, what's going to happen in the future? These beings would never tell me. I never got any visions of the future and destruction, none of that. But I did get told by them, this will never happen again. And something happened in the past on this planet that turned this planet into something that looked like, I kind of was shown like something looked like almost a cinder going in orbit around this sun. Okay, so something happened to this planet that it had to completely be regenerated from, and they said that's never going to happen again.
So the
So I mean
nuclear,
that takes us even further than what Randall Carlson. I like his theories a lot, but it takes us even further back than that. Something happened here, devastation. They said that's not going to happen again here.
and
So
the devastation was nuclear, right?
I don't know. I don't know, man.
But
I don't know.
that's the maybe something that we could gather from what they're showing you in that picture.
Two things on that. Okay, so I had Jessica Jones. I gave her blind targets of who was it messing with the nuclear weapons? Who was doing that? And the other blind target I gave her was who was taking the time to communicate with, like, per se, starting with the Zimbabwe school children. Okay. And, if you go a little deeper with that, maybe I can actually do this one right. There is a book right here. And the reason why I want to do that, this book right here by Preston Dennett, it's Schoolyard Encounters. Okay. He's got like 70 encounters that happen that are similar to the Zimbabwe children. That's a lot more common than we think, schoolyard encounters with extraterrestrials and craft.
Well, I was just about to say, there's been so many schoolyard encounters, and then you bring a book that's like 70 schoolyard encounters,
Yeah. Oh, he's great. But the point, so I want to know who's doing that, Jock. Who's taking the time to reach out to the children,
right?
The future of our planet, saying save the planet. Who's doing that? Who's messing with the nuclear warheads? So I gave her, these are separate blind targets. And you know what data came out in both of those?
What? This is Jessica Jones. This is remote viewing by Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. So go ahead.
Okay. First, I clowned about it a little bit because I've clowned this name a little bit, okay? Because it sounds like a Star Trek ripoff. And right now, there's all sorts of things. People say, those are really the demons and all this other stuff. And it's the Galactic Federation. She kept getting that in the data. Who's doing this with the children?
Yeah.
And who's doing that with the nuclear warheads? When I got it, I got, before meeting her, I had got also about a faction of humans that are here on Earth now that are raised off planet generationally. And then they're brought here and they have access to that technology like these crypto-terrestrials do. And when they use that technology, it uses the holographic projection of like plasma balls and stuff like that. Like the thing that broke that, like there was several years ago, there was that meteor that hit in that Russian city. And if you watch when it's coming in, something impacted and split it. Okay, it looked like a plasma deal. I think that's them. That's them using this technology that's messing with the nuclear places as well. But Jessica kept getting this Galactic Federation. I had to eat a little bit because the beings I dealt with would never even give me a name until I was 37 years old. I asked a bunch of times, and the name they gave me was even cornier than the Galactic Federation. It was cornier than the Ashtar Command. All the stuff I've been, I've been clowning on. And I was like, oh Lord, when I got that telepathically, okay, I didn't even say it out loud. I said, oh my God, you got to be kidding me! I can't tell people that name. Well, the Extragalactic Interdimensional Cooperative Alliance? Oh, come on! And
that's cool.
And it's going to be but I'm thinking back that y'all got to be joking, but they're real serious. Some that they weren't joking, and
that's
they were
cool.
saying
you've got the Galactic Federation over here, which is for let's say our dimension or a few of our dimensions, third, fourth, fifth, maybe, and then you've got the Extragalactic Interdimensional Cooperative Alliance with the emphasis on cooperative, and so that's cool. You could have both.
Such a big cosmos, obviously that one, but they're saying like we go from the micro to the macro, and you need to emphasize on the cooperative part. Yeah, I know more what that means now than I did then. Okay, but anyway, point being that kept coming up in that data of Jessica's, and and a certain part of it, like when I had her do the crop circles too, that one she got kind of emotional on me. And she got a message through the crop circles, the positive ones, and it was the balls that there's one in Wiltshire, they've got it on video of these 3 and maybe 4 plasma balls making this crop circle and then going back up and taking
like in 3 seconds or something, right?
Yeah, it's super quick.
Yeah.
That was another blind target. And that's the one she got emotional on. She said, I got a message with this target saying that we know you all are tired, but don't give up. There's help. and this other stuff she was saying that came with that. And and I'm a prime questioner of when we get to a point that we evolve beyond these containers for our consciousness, what is the next level for us? Is it energized plasma, high energized plasma? And is that what we're seeing, or also time travelers coming back doing those crop circles,
Yeah.
showing us free energy,
Well,
showing us other ways? And
there's this book called The Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle, who wrote way back in the day as an astrophysicist. And he talked about this cloud in a sci-fi novel that is intelligent, huge cloud that's intelligent, and that a plasma form is a perfect form for consciousness to arise in. And that the cloud was surprised that these biological forms were able to house consciousness, because through the cloud, it was so much easier to attain consciousness in the form of plasma out in space.
yeah. And and when looking at the crop circles themselves, especially the work of Dr. Livingood, he showed how just the ones that are bent, the real crop circles, how actually they're exposed to something called an electron avalanche. Okay, and also the microwaves that they're hit by. This causes a resilience in the seeds, that the seeds from the crop circle deals, they produce like twice the
yield,
vegetative
yield
produce that the ones than the others. And that's showing us something about that, another way to combat food shortage, I believe. So it's things like that real crop circles are showing us when people say we don't get any help. Sure about that? It's little things like that, but you don't hear about Dr. Livingood's work very much, or any of the people that have taken credit for it now. It just isn't really talked about. Instead, we're still tripping on Dave and Doug, that they must have did them all.
Well, the thought control matrix always wants to do damage control whenever truth starts to slip out. So when you have a beautiful crop circle and you got a film of it being made in 3 seconds, and you see the craft, and then the craft just disappears after making it, you can see it being made on the film. Then the thought control system comes in and says, okay, well, there are these people who hoaxed a crop circle 2 years ago, and we're going to promote that. So they promote this thing about some idiots going out with boards and ropes who actually did hoax a crop circle and said, we did that. And they go, yeah, all crop circles are hoaxes. So the damage control is sort of circus-like and ridiculous, but it works because the vast majority of people will see that one was hoaxed, so they must all be hoaxed.
And you've got those circles that are being made by forces that are not positive. And when you hear people that actually examine the circles, they'll tell you when they go in one of those, they get sick. They feel ill. So there's a negative energy thing going on there. You know what I mean? And that's fascinating, I think. So you've got everything that's being corrupted or attempted to be co-opted at some point.
Right.
Co-opted and corrupted. But yeah. So anyway, that's it's fascinating concerning, because I know you want to talk about that whole Galactic Federation thing, and I know people say, oh, they're the evil ones and all that. Well, I got to say, man, although it's just data, that didn't come out in the data she had, and they're the ones that are doing that. That's helping us out as opposing to demonizing us, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean,
based on the data. I myself have not had the group say, hey, we're the Galactic Federation. I've not interacted with them that I know of. They may all be working together. I don't know. We start dealing with for me, a lot of my experiences, this being wise, have been extra galactic and also universal. They're going into other universes.
Extra universe.
Yeah, but multiverse outside, to a degree. Yeah, and I had to deal with that. Like we talked about Dr. Shields. I did a lot of private work with him. He started calling me once a week for about 2 months. We talked for once a week for a couple hours, and it was life-changing in terms of he was not an experiencer, but certain things about my experiences he really wanted to know more about, because they had connections to his model of MECOs, magnetically eternally collapsing objects, and things like what it is to go through one. And when I start talking about some of these beings, he starts saying these beings are from different universes. I was like, well, one of them, it's like so many billion light years out, the galaxy of Bell 227. He's like, you were younger when you were having these experiences, and they were saying things like that, but really it's other universes. And when he started, he mentioned a couple of which way beyond me, Jock. Equations. He said your equations, your theory wouldn't hold up against the equations. It would take it to other universes. And and then like I've seen this craft. I won't show up all the pictures, but this craft had it started off. This is the first one when I was about 18, 17, and my experiences started back up again. It's missing time. Somebody else was with me, but this craft I see it appears to be almost like a metal. It's a metal craft with a what's called a directional antenna on top of it. Right, it looks quite similar to this. There's just another gyro ball on the bottom of it, but this is one of the sketches of it. It looked like that at first.
So it's got
And
three. It's got three of those the balls
yeah,
at the bottom that help
yeah.
it directionally go left, right,
It
up,
actually
down.
had four. There's another picture, but I'm not going to go
Oh,
through
is
all
there
again.
four? Okay, usually
Actually,
it's
four.
three.
And I think what's different about this craft, I'm pretty sure that those are actually like detachable pods
Hmm.
or like yeah. And I think that another environment in there, but I think they're a little different than what we're familiar with in
Oh,
terms of propulsion.
oh,
Anyway,
okay.
but the thing is, this turned into what's called a tripyramidal Merkaba. Anybody that's got a Keys of Enoch book, you can look that up on page such and such. Tripyramidal Merkaba. It turned into that, which is like this light inside of these crystal balls with these stalactites coming out of them, or stalagmites. I'm sorry, stalagmites. Yeah,
Stalagmites. Yeah.
stalagmites. Yeah, and so it looks like that. All right, and I'd accept that. And Rudy Shields is telling me, he said, you were watching that thing do a pattern of unfoldment to reach its destination in another universe.
So that craft,
Because
that craft was turning into a geometrical sort of lots of triangle shapes in it, Merkaba, and didn't look like a round disc shaped craft anymore.
yeah, at first it looked like it was almost static around it before it changed into this other
Shape.
this other shape. Yeah, I'm trying to got a picture of it. I'm sorry, it's so unorganized right now, but
That's
I'll
all right.
grab it real quick. And it's almost easier for me to do this and trying to pull it up. There it is.
So you went
Okay.
at your own expense. You've had these illustrations drawn up to explain your experience to people.
Yeah. A long time ago, I had Christine Dennett did it all for me, which is actually Preston's sister-in-law. So that's actually craft itself. You can see it's got the
Okay.
things on
There's
the bottom now.
four
Yeah,
directional
yeah, yeah,
balls.
and the top has that thing called directional emitter. And every time that light would come around, it was like woo, woo, like it was tuning me in. Okay. And I
Mm.
can tell you what it is now is because they were adjusting to my brain frequencies, my brain waves. And when you start dealing with these MECOs, these magnetically eternally collapsing objects, the black holes, okay, the surface of the black hole, okay, when something goes through it, okay, it creates a perfect copy on the surface that's called the quantum hologram.
Okay.
And the MECO itself within the black hole is the mechanism that holds the information. Okay. But this quantum hologram on the surface, okay, when you start dealing with the universe that's going through their universal information, that's actually the Akashic records. Okay. The records of space and time. And how it operates is on something called conscious waves. And the conscious waves are spherical. Okay. When it comes to or sorry, spherical and helical. And what we have in our bodies are called microtubules. And for this one, I'm talking about here, the brain, microtubules of the brain, okay, actually have something called the mirror neuron network, which is quite similar to what I just explained here with the quantum hologram. Just me telling you this right now, you're seeing it. It's the mirror neuron network that's doing that. All right. And that they're also, the microtubules are spherical. So if we're going to access one of these MECOs, the Akashic records, we do it through brain waves. The speed of thought is almost instantaneous to even get to one of these MECOs.
And the
Okay,
MECOs, the MECOs aren't just out in the universe and space; they're everywhere, right?
they're everywhere. We've got micro wormholes, MECOs all over this planet. We've got
Inside
them.
us.
We've got them inside attached to. Rudy had told me about a calculation they had that attached actually the MECO to each individual molecule of our body.
Hmm.
So we're full of them. I know you like that video I had did with the whistleblower Corey Good, and
Yeah,
but
you
it
guys
was
were
about
outside. You were
and
outside by the creek there, and you were talking about different races and their appearance.
Yeah, melanated black extraterrestrials and melanated ethnic extraterrestrials. That video like went viral.
The Zulu.
But
He was
he
talking
had
about
he
the 7 foot tall Zulu and stuff like that.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
really
I don't
cool.
think they had a name at that point yet, did they? They conveniently became Zulu sometime later, right? Anyway, but but he was saying how that species that race has the ability to access every black hole in their body to use it for galactic transport, universal probably transport, and that they're unconquerable by technology.
Right, because he
And
said that
then yeah,
their
yeah, yeah,
psionic abilities were so strong that they were able to trick the Draco for millennia.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so that craft, it starts going into this. Okay, it starts transforming on me to that. See star. Then it ends up looking like this. And anybody that has a Keys of Enoch book, please go to the index and look up the tripyramidal Merkabah. He's got bipyramidal Merkabahs and tripyramidal Merkabahs. You'll see something looks quite similar to this. I actually met JJ Hertalk in Vegas, and we sat and talked for a second. I asked him, "So where'd you see that illustration? Where'd you see that?" He's like, "Those beings took me to their planet, and I saw it." I said, "I've seen something similar too." And I tell you, I've had that man's individual, full attention for like almost 10 minutes. Interesting man. Anyway, point being that that's what I saw. And when Rudy was talking about, I was seeing it doing a pattern of unfoldment before it went through a Mako to go to another universe. And he started asking me. He's like, Barry, what happened at the end of that? How did that experience end? And I said, this thing was floating. First of all, it's one thing to talk about this stuff, but to see it, man, it pushed my ability of perception to the border, my friend. You understand? I was younger too. It just really pushed it to the edge of perception, blown away. But when it's over, the thing went out just like somebody turned off a light. Like a light switch was turned off, it just went off. I could still see the shadow of it moving, then it disappeared. And he started yelling, going, "That's exactly what you should have said." I said, "What do you mean?" That's exactly what you should have said. He says, "Little things like that you say that makes me know that you're not just making stuff up." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Barry, that was the quantum hologram you saw right there. It had already went through and the light was gone. You saw the shadow, the quantum hologram, and it doesn't last and it disappeared." So the times when we see a UFO and one of them's going like that, then all of a sudden there's two of them,
Mm,
then there's one,
mm.
and then none.
All right.
That's the whole quantum hologram thing we're talking about right here.
And
That
you,
ties in the Akashic records. So, Jock, if we have civilizations, okay, like Michikako and them call it type 1, 2, 3, and 4. But type 3 is when they start using the fabric of space as their power source. And going more than that, they start using the Mako itself as a power source. So civilizations like that may no longer be in existence, but they went through the Mako, and their Mako, they still live within the Mako, the AKA Akashic records, and they can be accessed through our brain waves. That's where that comes from. We hear a lot of people talk about the Akashic records, the records of space and time, but they can't tell you really what it is. I just told you what they are. So those Makos, those black holes, are actually the hard drives of the universe. And I think it's important to understand how they connect with our bodies in that way. Okay. And that goes with these ships and other things. But that thing on top of that directional emitter, not just was it tying me in my brain waves, also has the ability to project like a high energy plasma beam that will open up a Mako, and then they ride through like using gravitational waves. And I think what our science is now calling negative matter, not just antimatter, but negative matter. It's different matter with like no mass that creates a gravity repulsive deal. I think that's what they're using. And I think they'll soon prove that negative matter exists as much as antimatter. Anyway, another subject there. Okay. Sorry, I'm going too far
okay,
off. But anyway,
so Barry, Rudy Shield, who is a Harvard emeritus astrophysicist, is talking to you for hours at a time each week, and he's telling you that after you tell him your experiences, your lived experiences with these craft and these beings, he's saying you went to another universe through a Mako, right? That's how you got there, through this Mako. Is that what he's saying?
that would be a different experience. This was something I was watching that from the sky. I'd
Right.
already been on board this craft, but I was watching it. I was watching it in the sky doing this at the end of the experience. Because there's a
Okay.
point to where I got out of the car and we both like just out of the car, and the car was turned around. It was bizarre as hell. But
Yeah.
but yeah, and it was more than just somebody else is with me and they're watching the ones I'm watching. Then another one came up, looked like a golden ball, and they're watching. It's got light coming off it. They're watching that one, but I can't take my eyes off this one because of the transition I've seen it make. Okay, and I remember her like crying because looking over towards the city, you could see like maybe other craft that were shining lights down on houses. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And this individual with me starts crying, saying they must be doing that all the time. And we don't know it. How long
Yeah.
before they get tired? I look at him, hell, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm still tripped on this thing I'm watching up here. Mouth is all dried, like the rifleman when he walked through the desert. You know what I mean? It was like that. But anyway, that's just the system of that. Now, as far as being on one,
Yeah.
I've experienced something like when it feels like we're like a bump. Okay. And when I say that you're on one of these craft, it's not like just huge, it throws you up in the air or anything. It's just this boom, like that. And Rudy had said, man, that really that's when you go through one of these MECOs, when they're traveling through one. And that he said other contactees have explained that too, feeling that bump. I had no idea. You know what I mean? So anyway,
Hmm. Well, to bring some comedy into this, because this is super deep and I absolutely love it. But what comes to mind when you say the bump is on Star Trek in the original series, watching it as a kid, you see that sometimes they'll be thrown out of their chairs because they have no seat belts. And when the ship turns, they're thrown out and they're holding on to this, and then they're thrown this way and they're holding on. And it's like that's just to lighten this up for a second. You've traversed so many subjects, and your experiences as a child and as an adult with extraterrestrial, or let's say extra dimensional races who are in the extragalactic interdimensional cooperative alliance, you have illustrations showing what these races look like, specifically what they look like and what their personalities are. These people that these beings that guided you and talked to you and taught you things. You have so much intel, and we can always go off on many tangents, but bring it back to the brain, because you mentioned brain waves, you mentioned, and we started this with Neurorights. So how do we bring this back to the subject of Neurorights for humans, for organic humans on Terra? So what is our mission here regarding Neurorights in 2025?
I think talking about the experiences and how much they are a matter of consciousness,
Mm.
and it's hard to accept that, some of these beings that we're experiencing, some people don't like it when I say this, but some of the beings we're experiencing are not just coming from different planets, not just different galaxy, not just different dimensions or densities, which are different, or any of that. They're actually coming from consciousness, aka things like what I just mentioned about the Akashic records. Some of those civilizations probably no longer exist, but they still exist within the MECO, aka Akashic records, and they can interact with us and access us through our brainwaves, or us them. That's very serious, but it's something that we're not, taking to account a lot. So some of these beings, quote unquote, actually come from consciousness, and that's hard to just for many to accept. No
Right.
place of origin. You know
So,
what I mean? But
so,
anyway, just
so let's say that, if we look at Terran humans as just people just bopping along, doing their shopping, and then going home, watching the game, having a beer, going to sleep, getting up, doing the same damn thing every day. There's all these forces out there who may or may not, who have access to our minds easily, and so they can grab our thoughts, they can change our thoughts, they can manipulate our thoughts to make us feel emotions that we don't want to feel. So there's all these players in the game. We don't even know we're in a war We're just going shopping. You know, we want to get the next cool trendy thing. We want to get a nice shirt that makes us look cool. So, you know, we've got these players on the board, the chessboard of the universe, and they're after our consciousness for some reason, and they're after our DNA frequencies for some reason. All these things are valuable to them. It's so interesting you mentioned that we have the possibility of races who are literally extinct in reality, but come to us in a holographic way through from the MECO, from the surface of these MECO spheres. That's astounding. Laws would not that we create here on Terra would not apply to any of these forces, because they don't care what laws we make about protecting our consciousness. In the field of Neurorights, they don't care. Even the benevolent extraterrestrials are sending star seeds to the planet. That's one way of looking at it. That's one term. I know you're not a starseed term lover, but you know that there's interference. There's interference from the benevolence, sending sending souls here to do good work for one side. So there's always interference. So the Prime Directive that Gene Roddenberry talks about in Star Trek, where we're not supposed to interfere with these poor primitive races who are developing. Nobody follows the damn Prime Directive. Okay, so our laws are not going to protect us from anybody's intrusion into our brains, as far as I'm concerned.
It's a serious problem. It's a serious problem. I mean, not just that, and like I said, we're talking about neurocognitive now that are based on assaults from corporations and things. But as far as assault on us psychically and keeping us cattle is extreme. You know, as somebody that can see, especially when I was younger, I would see even more. You know, I could see it. Now it's more almost, it comes as a knowing too, but I used to be very visual when I was younger. And I would see what the luminous cocoon around people, the biofield. And it's normally shaped like either circular, spherical, or even mushroom type. Some people that are really strong, so more mushroom at the top, like. But anyway, it's an energy field. But I noticed on babies, when I look at babies, they had not just a luminous cocoon, but they have this glowing sheen over it, this bright sheen, like this yellowish white sheen. And I don't see it on it. I couldn't see it on adults. And on like teenagers, you know, I could see it like it was down to like their knees or maybe down to their ankles. So what was happening to this sheen? Why do we lose it? What it is that is food for predators that are swiping and taking that by using negative thoughts to generate negative emotions, and then they feed. And I know the term now is tease Jessica about it, that loose term. I hate that term because it sounds like it's ruining a bad Jolly Rancher or something. But you know, I always prefer the term DOR, deadly orgone radiation. But anyway, negative psychokinetic energy, emotional energy, they're feeding on us, and we're cattle in that way. So you know, so that shows you how much they're attacking children as we get our perception molded. You know, I've been a firm believer, Jock, that it's when in the old days when they slap a kid's butt, right, and then they scream the first time, take their first breath or whatever. But I always thought that they screamed not because of the pain of being slapped on the butt, but because when they open their eyes, they're just coming from the other side partially, and they open their eyes and they see how dense it is here, and they go, "Oh my God!" I think that's what that is. And then you get the goo goo gagas and you start adjusting perceptually. You know what I mean? All the way to growing up. That's why some kids can see, and the older you get, the more you get molded out of it. But anyway, it's just interesting. You know, I think that just the fact that we're prey and we're being herded like cattle is disturbing by these negative inorganic beings that are invisible for the most part, just like their voices are invisible, telling you to kill yourself, these other things. I never understood it because the voices tell the people to do things that will take them out of service and kill them, and that's killing that's destroying their food source. Never understood that, but I guess it is what it is. You know, but anyway.
Well, they got millions and millions and billions of us to feed on, so maybe there's enough left over after somebody commits suicide. But Carlos Castaneda
Hmm.
wrote these amazing books, and the Luminous Cocoon it's in his fiction series, but to me, he downloaded it, whether he thought of it as fiction or not. Maybe he thought I'm just writing a fiction novel, but he's downloading something real, in my opinion, that is just in the form of a novel. So I would say that everything in the Castaneda books is true. Everything is true. He's using fictional characters maybe to tell us what's really happening.
You know, I got introduced to his work in 1988. It took me a couple years to go through his entire series. Went through it twice, all the way up to about I kind of started falling off after the Dream book, the Dreaming book. After that, it seemed like get a little weird. But and then also the women of his party, which would be Florinda Donner, Tasha Ablar, and then also another lady by the name of oh gosh, what's his name? She really came out against him. Oh, Marilyn Tunishindi. All of them were part of that, and they had interactions with Don Juan Mattis. They may call him different words, Ariello, and different names like that. But it's so interesting to hear their take on how they were taught, and in Castaneda's too. Now, with Castaneda, the thing is this, and I've always brought this up, okay? The thing is this, people say it's just fiction. And I will ask, like, have you tried any of the techniques he gave? No. I said, well, I have. And if they're fake and fiction, why do they produce third dimensional results? And I've got an astral sign that, man, I will try a bunch of different stuff. I'll put energy into it. And if the systems didn't work, I move on to the next thing that actually gives me third dimensional results. And his did, like, for example, one that caught my attention is one of his earlier books. It was called The Gate of Power. And it's a system that Mattis taught him of raising your knees very high when arching your backs in a certain way and pulling the lines of the earth to move through a completely dark field.
Right.
And, when I started doing,
so literally in the middle of the night, when you can't see anything and there's like this treacherous terrain all around them, this guy is telling the protagonist to go run with these high stepping steps, and everything's going to be fine. And the protagonist is going, are you serious? I don't know. I got too much fear to do that. There's all sorts of rocks and holes and cactuses and,
Mm-hmm. And when I tried it, what I noticed is you can see a small light as you're running that kind of stops you from tripping. It's some from your solar plexus. Okay. But what I didn't understand about this technique, really what it does, and when I researched it, trying to find out where it actually came from, it's connected to what you and I would know as the Great Walkers. Remember the Great Walkers that supposedly walked across the Bering Strait before it was still complete? And the Great Walkers were using the Gate of Power. I always wondered, you know what I mean? That was a technique that came from them, apparently. But, what I didn't realize was what that technique ultimately does. It's not just about not tripping and busting your ass. It's actually about, it stops the internal dialogue, stops us from talking to ourselves.
It's great.
And when that stops, that's when we truly become multidimensional. You know what I mean? That's one of the keys, and that's what it was doing to me. And then next thing I know, I'm seeing these. It's like the middle of January, and I'm seeing these things look like fireflies, but they're so quick and they go out. And then later on, then I start seeing a ship manifested. And a couple of times I took off, man. I mean, I just be honest. F the Gate of Power. I ran straight like Carl Lewis out of there and got my car and took off, man. I mean, just because at that point in my life I'd had so many encounters, and those ships manifest and they come too close, suddenly you've lost hours of your life.
Right.
And you can still see the beings, you can see the technology, everything. And the further you get from the event horizon, it starts, as my brother would say, it starts. You know what I mean? Something about the different frequency that they're on, the different vibration, I guess we should call it, the speed they're on, the speed I'm on, the further you get away from the event horizon, the harder the retention of memory is. Something just about that situation. Can't say that's for everybody. Right. Mind wipes definitely go on, okay? But that is a natural effect of dealing with some of these beings from different quote-unquote vibrational frequencies, speeds, all the words we misuse half the time. Anyway.
So we've got these archons, what Castaneda called flyers, and he said you can see these dark flyers out of the corner of your eye if you're really conscious, if you're really aware. But normally we don't see them. They're invisible to normal people who are just, going to the football game and shopping. So we've got these entities, archons, that are talked about in the Nag Hammadi text. I mean, like 1/5 of the Nag Hammadi texts, the Coptic Egyptian language texts that were written to hide this. They were written in Coptic Egyptian to hide them from the ruler and from the ruling class. This was Gnostic wisdom, and it was all about the friggin' archons. And archon means ruler, so that they're ruling us from the fourth dimension, the fourth density, whatever you want to call it. And Castaneda brings that into popular culture and says, I'm going to call them flyers. That's what they call them in Mexico. That's what the shamans in Mexico call these things. They don't know anything about archons. They call them the flyers. They see them, and these forces are coming at us, and they're taking away they're distracting us from what you're saying, which is our true power. As soon as we're not distracted, and as soon as we're doing this high-stepping thing that Don Juan talks about in the desert, and we're not distracted by our own negative thoughts that are inspired by these archons, these flyers, then we start to access our true selves with a capital S, and then real stuff starts to happen in our lives that we would think of as paranormal, but it's actually the real normal stuff that because we're distracted, we see a society, a world of just mundane shit all day long, because we're not accessing our true self. So that's super cool that you did that in 3D.
You're an interesting guy, Jock. So check it out. So man, so when I was younger, man, my oldest brother, he's 69 right now. He's years older than me, but he's my one sibling that has had some experiences. They're not like mine, but he's had some, and he's a musician. So like the star beings will address him in a musical way. They've always caught his attention like that.
Wow.
One experiences he would have all the time is he would have these incredible astral projections of like going so far through MECOs and other things he was doing and stuff. I couldn't do that. I had to really try to work at the astral projection, the OB as we used to call it. I had all this other stuff happening. I could do all this other stuff, but I couldn't seem to do the astral projection. Like, how the hell my brother can do it? I can't. So I started studying all these techniques, trying to induce the OBE easier. Okay. And what happened was it altered the way I could see already. And what I started seeing were these shadows. Okay. And I saw two different types. One was spherical, and they're real fast, flinting. And, we see in our peripheral is really black and white. You think it's not, but it's really black and white. And that's why we can often see spirits in the peripheral. Okay, but I started learning to be able to track them without just the peripheral. I would see two types, the circular ones that were quicker and ones that were more oval almost. And I used to work at this bowling alley through high school and college, and just a couple of nights a week. I didn't bowl, though, oddly enough. I hell of Brooklyn, though, Jock. Don't be mistaken. Anyway, one of my coworkers, the bartender, was bowling. After when we shut the place down, they could all bowl for free, and they were practicing. She's down there practicing, and she's just, she got like what they call a turkey. I can't remember if that's 4 or 5 strikes. Anyway, she's just killing it. And I had watched this one of the oval ones go past me, and I could track it go down. And I watched it join with her. It's a black shadow on the top of about her crown chakra and elongate down to about her sex chakra, and it's pulsing. It starts turning a gray color, and she's just wham. And I was like, I'm going to, Trisha, you all right? And she says, I remember looking at me, so Barry, I'm all right, but I think the stinking thinking is just getting to me. And, that's when I realized, okay, this thing is in, and she's going to later get divorced. That wasn't public yet or nothing, but that was, so reason to get somebody upset. I knew what this thing was doing was generating these negative thoughts to get her energy going so it could feed. Okay. And that to me was a bit terrifying. So I started like, oh God, please take it away. I don't want to see that no more. I don't want to see the shadows no more, but not long after that, I had the individual that turned me on to Castaneda 10 years earlier. We're sitting in this room. He has me over and we're sitting in this room and it's like pitch black in there. He turns the light up. It's pitch black. He got the windows covered and all this stuff. What are you doing, man? And it didn't take long before I started seeing movement within the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it caught me off guard. And then one of them was big. I could see it, and it sounded like it landed. Boom. And he's like, "You heard that, didn't you?" I say, "Yeah." He said, "I knew you had enough energy to be able to perceive them." I said, "What the hell was that?" It was big. He said it was one of those things that Castaneda calls the flyers. And they're heavy, they're dense. That's why you can hear them like that. I was like, "Turn that damn light back on, man." And that was about the end of that experiment. But nonetheless, that's that flyer that they were talking about there. They're a different type of those shadow beings. They're more dense. I don't know where they come from, but I think they're found even more around places that have portals. And you have a haunted location, Jock. They're like those portals are almost like male and female. If you've got one big one on a property in a close proximity, you've got another one. Okay, and it seems like sometimes the one maybe that's more the female, the more negative, those dark forces will use that a lot more. And even more to the fact of what we're talking about, these beings that start generating these negative thoughts, and then we start, building that energy that they're feeding on, then they use our own pineal gland as a wormhole to start manifesting more in the third dimensional. And that's when they really start effing with you, excuse my language, messing with your life.
Barry, I love that you're talking about Castaneda because those books were so important to me when I was younger. And I kept reading one after another. And eventually I had to stop because it was so intense that I just had to get it was taking me out of my real, actually, Matrix world and putting me into his world. And I was like, this is too hard for me. So I stopped reading them. But they were really great books and I recommend them to everybody. So different parts of the world, they talk about the same thing as Mexico does. Mexico calls them the flyers. We call them the demons here in the Western world. Then you've got the jinn. They're called the jinn in North Africa and the Middle East. So everybody has different names for these things. And the academic world would simply dismiss all of those as fantasy. But the academic world is full of people who have been schooled by textbooks written by sketchy families, and we won't go into that. So, what else do you want to talk about? I mean, we have the main thread of neurorights, but I'm kind of wondering if humanity has any rights in a world where there are forces far beyond our perception that are working against us, or just simply want to investigate our thoughts and have access to our thoughts without our permission.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the point of where I think this is where it starts. And we start establishing ourselves with these rights and things before we become a type 1 civilization. Because what you and I have talked about here is actually a type of enslavement being done to us consciously, like you see in the Matrix and things like that. And you're seeing that happening right now on the psychological, on the spiritual site, and all that. That's what's actually happening, is this type of enslavement right now. And it's being done through actually programming. And is that the way we actually become enslaved before we become a type 1 civilization consciously? And that's what it seems like is being trying to be done right now, to where the fact that, that's why I've tried to kind of bridge the difference between people that have SSP contact and people like me. Instead of these people are right, these people are wrong, bringing it all together, no right or wrong, but let's find out what's going on and make the entire tapestry. You know what I mean? So that means people can't be disqualified. You can't always throw the baby out with the bathwater, and stop all the argument and more figure out what's going on, what the dark forces are doing. Some of these targets I've given to Jessica, she comes up with these things that are these underground labs. And some of them are stuff that are really old targets. So these laboratories have been down. It's not just something new going on right now with MILAB and DARPA and all that. Jock, this stuff has been going on like thousands of years. They've been down there doing these different chimeras and different genetic experiments and stuff on this planet. It's nothing new. We're just such a concocted world we're living in that it's unreal.
So they're creating genetic chimeras and doing all sorts of gnarly stuff like sex trafficking, child trafficking, and cloning, and it's all illegal, illicit, unlawful. Illegal and unlawful are two different terms. People should find out the difference, because we have a whole system of laws to which illegal and legal apply, but the real fundamental laws all come down to one law, and that's what lawful and unlawful apply to. And that one law is that you may not transgress upon another person's person or property. So our minds, our thoughts are our property. They are our person. So Neurorights is a new field talking about something that is extremely important, which is that others may not transgress upon our thoughts, our consciousness. So when those laws come into effect, we'll have the laws in the books, but then we have to ask ourselves, maybe we can't rely on the courts to protect us from intrusion into our minds, into our spirit, into our thoughts. Maybe we have to set up protections ourselves that are consciousness based protections. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, you mean in terms of? I'm sorry, in
Well, I
terms of
mean,
kind of said it all.
do we do we have the power as conscious spirit, as conscious beings, to set up protections that are energetic protections for our own consciousness, or do we have to rely on the court system to like take corporations to court later on?
We're able to protect ourselves from the negative inorganic beings that are attacking us in that way. We can do protections, set up psychic protections, energetic protections for that.
Okay.
But when you start going to the next level, the target individual and the neural programming that's messing with our cognitive, that's different. Like some of these frequencies, I don't know that they can be stopped. They have to be stopped probably at the source. But by protecting, like some people say, oh, you can wear a Faraday suit and a Faraday hat and that stuff. Some
Mm.
people say it works. Some people said it didn't. They still got the V2K through it. Even didn't matter. So, but it's little things like that. So I think finding technology that can actually counter the technology that these parent corporations are using is another complex subject. I've seen
Yeah.
different things, different patents and different technology for things that people claim will stop these frequencies. But then when I ask somewhere like my Nexus, they say something that their bodies are still generating them. You know what I mean? So it doesn't work all the time. But I think we'll get there a type of way. But it's something that's just being now, even being brought to the mainstream, the light. What's going on right now?
Well,
Truth always comes to light eventually.
if people do what I did the last week and Google neuro rights as one word or neuro rights as two words, they'll find all this,
Neurocognitive, yeah.
they'll find all these corporations out there who are fully just they're set up simply to deal with what they call neuro rights. And I'm like, oh, well, that seems weird because why would how can corporations make money from defending us from neuro invasions? And I don't think they're going to be making money doing that. I think they're making money doing something else, and they're just using neuro rights as a cover. Like we care about your rights, but I think that they're doing something else.
Yeah. Well, the fact you're not getting any response, shows one thing. And I think also more than anything, you're dealing with a ton of fear right now because there's going to be organizations trying to shut people up. And you're dealing with a lot of money and a lot of power and the ability they can switch that technology on you and ruin your life. You know what I mean? Switch on whatever's in your body. So that's things like that I'm very cognizant of. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I think so. I think there's a lot of fear and intimidation that we're dealing with also, especially the process that's being brought to the courts and just being brought to light. And it'll be a long process to get it stopped, but at least it's the beginning and starting somewhere. Because if not, you're looking at the total loss of humanity is what you're looking at. It's getting bad enough right now that everybody's looking down at their phone all the damn time. You know what I mean? Getting programmed by blue light. That's enough. But you keep taking another level higher, and these frequencies we're being bombarded with. There's something called the Wireless Body Area Network, WBAN. And when you start looking at these nanosensors, or sorry, nanosensors, excuse me, biosensors and also semiconductors that are being implemented in people through these different nano dust and a food and everything else. When you start connecting that with what's called the wireless body area network, you can see completely how that can control somebody, how it can actually produce a completely false reality. That's what happened. That nonlinear junction detection technology is looking at that, looking at the wireless body area network. there's people right now using applications on phones that are using that Y-band, and then you could see like an aura around people. Oh, they got black goo on them. They got this, that, and using that to attack people. So I mean, but people don't even know what the heck it is. So it's little
Well,
stuff like that.
well, if people want to go to Mind Nexus on the internet, it'll take them to a site called cosmicclarityconnections.org, and they'll find Desiree Foley, and they'll find Mike Grady, and they'll find Jesse Beltran. You've mentioned Jesse and Desiree. Now,
He's
Jesse
great.
Beltran and Desiree were interviewed on Journey to Truth podcast with Tyler and Aaron, and that's a great interview that goes deep into what Jesse's technology can do to help people remove implants. So to identify the implants, just like a 2-hour scan that he does that right next to the body and the head, and to help them figure out what to do, once they've identified them. So this is a great organization, cosmicclarityconnections.org. So go grab that link. And
they were just on Joe Rogan like a couple of days ago.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm really glad for them that they're getting exposure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that you're going to see within what people call a community. I'd say more of its association of people with similar interests, but whatever. You're going to find though that what Mind Nexus is revealing is interfering with some fantasies. You know what I mean? And we have a lot of individuals that they want fantasy. They don't want science. They don't want facts. They want fantasy. So we're going to see how this all goes down and plays out. But I'm glad that they're getting some public acknowledgement. That, like I mentioned before, Daisy Foley was the first person that showed me scans of their body and their body emitting these non-natural frequencies. Showed me proof that they had nanodust in their vents.
Right.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And I mean, that's the first person I showed. And that's been several years ago where you and I met the first time. So, I mean, it's like, so that's been going on for a while, and I'm glad to see it come into light now. I think it's important, and it will help us keep our humanity. I'm not trying to sound all cheesy, but seriously.
Yeah. Well, Barry and I met at the 2023 Journey to Truth conference in Grafton, Illinois. And when Barry's talking about fantasy in this interview, he's talking about, I believe, and Barry, tell me if I'm right on this, you're saying that memories may have been implanted into people, and that these memories are what are being touted as a real lived experience in the past by these people. Now, this is just like the sci-fi movie Blade Runner, where the replicant, played by Sean Young, so brilliantly, has these memories, right? And Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, is able to tell her what her own memories are of her childhood that she's never told anybody, because he knows that he has access to the chip that was put in her that has all her memories on it. So she doesn't even know she's a replicant, and he tells her own memories, and she's like, it's an incredible scene. It's super powerful, where she finds out that her memories are false. Now, that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, that technology they're doing now, engineering dreams, turning dreams into memories, and those memories into reality. And that comes to a point, because we don't always remember our dreams, but when you turn it into memories, you remember that. I have a memory, and this memory is surfacing. You know what I mean? And and those are programs. It's not any of that programs have ended. People are still getting hit. It's increasing. So none of that is ended. You know what I mean? I think some of the people you and I have met that say that they're going through that in these programs just to let them know. And there's still stuff surfacing because they're still getting hit with this technology,
Yeah, and I don't want to be a person who's saying, oh, those people, I'm going to bring it down to me, because we talked before this in the green room, let's say, for about an hour and a half. I mean, we went on and on about stuff, and I told you about a dream I just had 2 nights ago. And I've been putting up protection for the very first time in my life, because I'm sick of the Archons giving me anxiety dreams all night and waking up exhausted. So I said, I'm going to try this protection. So I had one dream about 4 or 5 nights ago that was not an anxiety dream. And I was like, hey, this is cool. I woke up feeling good. And I was like, oh, this actually works. The next night, the protection didn't work. Then the next night, the protection didn't work for half the night. But I had this dream where I met a twin who was female, same height, same, looked exactly like me, except that when you get close, you start to realize that this sort of heavy semi-military uniform that we both had on was concealing her feminine curves. And so I was like, oh my God, she's female. And the idea of cloning came up in the dream. And I was like, wait, she's a clone of me. But then I realized later, maybe I'm a clone of her. Maybe we're both clones of something else. And then I woke up and I told you this dream that I had literally 2 nights ago, 2 nights before our dream engineering, podcast episode. And you're like, oh, that could easily be, what did you call it? It could easily be
Targeted dream incubation.
targeted dream incubation. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And also hive mind, putting, there's a brain to brain interface, but also brain to simulation interface. And you might be experiencing that. So are they activating something in you, hitting you with some sort of frequency? You know what I mean?
Right.
You're very aware. And it's, and not just that, you've been to a lot of unique places also. You know what I mean?
Right. You're talking about the ancient sites on the planet.
hmm That's how I picked up that you're a contactee of some type. I think something happened at one of those places. You saw something and but it's subtle. Sometimes contact is really subtle. You
Right.
see, and especially when we go to the era before the era of the drones, before they messed that all up. But before that, you know what I mean? You see something really unique in the sky, and you may see maybe the group of people. God, you see that right there? And one person might see it, or nobody sees it, just you. What do you mean? It's right there. It's right there. And we don't think that would be the type of direct contact it might be in terms of you have a whole quote unquote federation of beings that are all stopping everything on the collective level just to talk to contact you. And that's exactly what's happening a lot of the time. And when you see something like that, then 2 or 3 nights later, you're having weird dreams about being a weird place or
Mm.
maybe about weird beings or weird people, but you don't connect it with something you saw several days ago in the sky. There's a time lag, and we go on with our lives almost immediately right after that. You know what I mean? So I mean, but when you're dealing with beings that are on a faster vibration or a faster frequency, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
that's kind of what happens because we're beings of perception and beings that the universe flows through us, just like, they say in that Castaneda stuff, flows through the luminous cocoon, and the assemblage point is actually the point of perception and where we perceive this world. So it doesn't take much for that assemblage point just to move along. What is it they call it? The band of man? Just a little bit, it moves, and we perceive a completely different world when different universal filaments start going through our assemblage point. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, I would see people's biofield. I didn't know what I was seeing there, I didn't think I was even seeing right because I wasn't seeing people's biofield like this cool book. That all the nice purple, red, light, all the colors around people. I wasn't seeing that. I was seeing a general energy field that was often a whitish color or a goldenish color, yellowish color. Okay, and I would see different shapes around people too that people's energy field were in. But in the middle of it, I would see kind of along where about our solar plexus is, around in there, I would see this black spot. I didn't know what it was. You know what I mean? Until I started reading the Castaneda stuff, they start saying that's the assemblage point. That's where we actually perceive worlds. And when that assemblage point moves anywhere along the band of man, which is around our solar plexus area, we assemble worlds that are similar to this one. But when you get the assemblage point moves to another place on the luminous cocoon, what are you perceiving then, man? When it moves to the top of the top of the luminous cocoon, those filaments of the universe that are going through there, what world do you assemble then? You know what I mean? So it's things like that that takes us to where we are. And I'm learning through the regression work I do that, we're much more than what we think. We're being cheated to enough to where other beings from other civilizations are wondering how they can love to the extreme that we do, get that intensity of love that we have here, or what happens to us when we do die and transition. Why do we go closer to creator and source than they do? I've heard
Mm.
this during the work. You know what I mean? Like I told you earlier, Jack, I don't make the rules, but I have to watch them and observe them and try to document them. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Right. So when people are saying, "Hey, you sound crazy, Barry," your answer is, "Listen, I don't make the rules."
Yeah, no, I don't make the
Cheers.
rules. Yeah, that's that's their thing, definitely, man. Like I said, I just try to understand it and try to make sense of it and try to use it to help people if it can be used for such. You know what I mean? That's where we're at right now. Because right now, this whole shift of consciousness, this whole change and all that, it's us, our awareness, us being more aware of each other, generous with each other, kind towards the planet, and being aware of the ramifications. People ask me, Jock, like when I first, after my near death experience in my car accident, people be like, when they're like, well, what'd you see? What happened? And I say, it's not nearly as important as this. I will say this. Before all that happened to me, look, when I come home after school, those after school specials, what was it like? Braveheart and G.I. Joe and all them. They were always talking about the golden rule. You know what I mean? And they go do unto others like you want to be done. So I always tried to live like that. Okay. And I thought I was a spiritual brother too. On top of that, I studied, I'd done all these things. But you know what? When I died and afterwards come back, I can say this, that even with all that, I greatly underestimated the impact that our relationships and choices have on each other, and how that's really what you take to the other side with you.
Well, it sounds like we need to protect our assemblage point just as much as we need to protect our brains, because they're probably going to be coming after our assemblage point.
Everything. They're coming for our entire luminous cocoon because they ingest, a lot of them ingest that luminosity is awareness.
Right.
They're beings that consume awareness. And I've mentioned before, but no means do people want people to think, oh, he's Mr. Love and Light. I'm not. Because I'll tell you right now, when you look at the ecosystems here on Earth, the natural ecosystems, they're very predatorial. And it would be foolish for us as beings of awareness and energy to think once we go out in the cosmos that it's any different. You have hostile beings that eat awareness, eat consciousness, devour it. And that's why I warn people to say, well, I battle demons, I do this and that. Okay, be careful, because you come up to something that's not one of these shadows we see in the peripheral. Come up against one of these demonic, not inorganic beings that is billions of years old. And you do your little protections, you say your little chants, and it looks at you and goes, oh, those are great stories. Now I'm taking you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're in for the struggle of your life. So know your role and choose your battles wisely.
Right. Well, I'm going to bring this home and say, look, instead of talking about other people and maybe seeming like I'm casting aspersions on anyone else or whatever, I'm going to bring it home and I'm going to say, last night I did the same thing I did for the last 5 nights, which was set up protection with a light cocoon around me before I went to sleep, with white crystals coming out of this beautiful Victorian mesh. And that was my perfect cocoon. And then I also put an energetic sphere around that cocoon of white light and purple at the top. And this is just my intuition telling me what to do. And I just did that. And the archons couldn't see me in this sphere because it was translucent, but basically wouldn't let them see me inside. I was like, okay, I'm protected. Last night I had the same anxiety dreams I had before my whole life. So they didn't protect me. So I had 2 dreams that did give me the feeling that the protection that I set up just before falling asleep did work, and I was able to escape the Archon anxious dream scenario. But then the majority of those nights, like 3/5 of the time, I was having the anxiety dreams. And so, I'm going to have to work on better protection. I'm going to learn that the archons have ways through the protections I've set up. And I'm going to try to set up better protections. And I'm going to think about my assemblage point, because Barry is on the mark. He's on the money. Castaneda is the man, and Barry resonated with Castaneda's work. And he's telling us the assemblage point is the solar plexus. So I'm going to work on protecting that. And we're going to see how it goes. And so I'm going to bring it home. I'm not going to talk about other people and how they should do this and they should do that. And if somebody should make a law, fuck it. who's going to make a law that's really going to protect us from an archon who's 1,000,000 years old?
Something else when it comes to protection, and I teach this a lot during my hypnosis sessions, is that the ability to project our intent of will is serious. And that's the key to protection. And when doing that, a way to access our intent of will and projecting it, intending it, is using our imagination.
Hmm.
Something we're not told enough. Like even when I will dissolve negative identities, it's done visually,
Hmm.
okay, through visualization and also the imagination. Something that unless you're an artist, we don't get pushed enough in our world a lot of times. Your imagination, if people think you're crazy, you know what I mean? Or those of us that actually had invisible friends as children that had names that talk to us, and then you get told, don't tell anybody, they'll say you're crazy, and all of a sudden you stop seeing them because your perception gets molded. You know what I mean? But anyway, just for example of that, so learning to intent will and tapping into creative visualization when doing that is a way to intend your will and get those things away from you. It's just like when you've been in a room and you get somebody that walks in that don't like somebody else, and you just know it. You don't know there's a problem between these people, but you can feel it. And that other person gets up and leaves. They can't be in the same room. That intense projection of will from that person that walked in ran their ass out of there. You know what I mean? So it's the same situation when accessing our imagination to trigger our intent of will through creative visualization. Very important. One of the things they don't tell us enough is that a major way that the brain communicates to the spirit, to our soul, is through imagery. It uses images. I'll leave it at that.
Well, speaking of using these techniques, I mean, you have a practice. I mean, you help people, individual people in sessions. So, can you tell people how they can contact you?
Oh, my pleasure. My email is barrylittleton13@gmail.com. I finally got that straightened out to where I get people's messages, not all that website building spam. Boy, they were getting me good. But I think I got that sorted out. So I get people there, barrylittleton13@gmail.com. I do sessions that are hypnosis and hypnosis. I do earthbound spirit release rescue. I do generational curse cutting. I do past life regressions, extraterrestrial regressions, and also trauma release, negative identity stuff. You don't have to be hypnotized for negative identity. But those are some of the services I offer there. That are
Yeah,
some. It's all about does it help your daily life? You know what I mean? I do readings too, which are cool, but readings are not as effective as empowering somebody else like the hypnosis does. It empowers yourself, and the power comes from within. You know what I mean? Opposed to worrying about is this person really psychic? Are they right? You know what I mean? It's more doing your own thing.
yeah, you helped me a lot. I booked two sessions in like for one session. I said let's just do two at once. And you're like, sure, man, let's do it. And one of them was trauma release, and one of them was past life regression. And we just sort of, whatever. It was all going to be good. So just whatever happens. And so you said I want to be able to see your hands, and I sort of scooted back, and so you could see my hands. I never asked why you wanted to see my hands, but you wanted to see them. So I was like, okay, he's the man. So yeah. And you've got this ability to also read micro expressions. So can you talk about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, body language kinesics, as it's called, which is body language. I learned that when I was younger, and just main thing is that a lot of times body language it comes in gestures, and you have gesture clusters, which are body movements people do. But then you have on the face what's called micro expressions that
Okay.
happen on the hot places of the face. Okay,
Okay.
and the micro expressions only last a millisecond. Okay, and unless you're a really good, well-trained politician or actor, it is very difficult to hide the micro expressions. When I learned that technique, the first time I really used it, it was against. It wasn't against. It was just on. It was President Clinton, and it's when he was getting accused of that. And it was this one. You remember? I did not have sexual relations with that woman like that. And when he was saying that, his hot spots on his micro expressions were one of surprisement. He caught it quick, though. I mean, immediately almost. It was one of surprisement instead of what should have been any other emotions. When surprisement, which is like a, man, I was getting my freak on and I got to explain it to you. I was like that. I was like, man, this cat's lying. Yeah, I didn't, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
The micro expressions are very real, my friend.
Well, I can't say that I know anything about micro expressions as far as being able to read them, but I do know that I can tell when somebody's lying. I mean, I know that the vast majority of politicians are lying. There's a veil over them, is how I look at it. Whenever somebody has a veil over them, I'm like, it's not just lying. It's something. It's usually more than lying. It's that they're suppressed in some way, and so I'm like, that's someone I don't want to have any contact with, because I want people who are open. The reason we're talking today is because you're one of those people who does not have a veil over them, as far as I can tell.
Well, thank you. Not much to hide.
There's no veil. You're just you, and you're talking, and it's real. So I like real.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Thank you.
I think people can see how real you are. I mean, it's like it's never-ending reality, with you.
It's the stressed out brother who got jacked up and wound up getting thrown out on Front Street. That's about it. I was one of those people that was always hiding and observing everything. I was like, now I'm gonna come forward one day. That was just talk, man. Had it not been for that accident, I never would have.
Well, you've had I think you've had 4 traumatic brain injuries that you recovered from. I think there was 4 accidents. And you've also had
it was one accident, four brain injuries during one accident.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I went through most of the windows in my car. Not the back one, but some of the front, the side. Went through my T-tops, that little Trans Am. Went through my T-tops, flew to the other side, went through part of that window and door. And
so your car was rolling along?
No, it just spun. It was spinning. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Bam. Yeah. When it got hit, that is. So yeah, it was.
But you
definitely had better days, my friend.
Yeah, you somehow recovered from this, and you kind of found out who your real friends were probably during that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was in a coma for about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and then it took about almost a month to remember who I was. And I had a clearing out, so they said that would probably never happen. They told my family I'd be a lifetime vegetable.
Oh man,
but God saw it different. You know what I mean? But when I had before I could even remember who I was, as soon as I regained consciousness, I could still see these angelics in my mind's eye, which I call, this book here, Uranta book, would call them Supranaphim, Naphim. They're a type of higher, I guess we could use the word archangel or whatever, but they're a different classification of angel that do something slightly different that I saw. I saw 4 of them when I died. And I know they were toning it down, because they were like pure love and pure light, and I'm sure a little bit more would have killed my body. But I know they're real, and I know that they channeled enough of people coming by my window room to see me, a couple hundred people praying for me, actually, that they channeled that to where you see me healed the way I am now. And one thing about that book is they're really good about giving universal description of different beings and different citizens of the super universes, as they call it. They talk about 7 super universes in that book. Okay, we're one, and then you've got these others. It's an interesting book. It's kind of got a little bit of neo-Christianity type of stuff tied up in it, but once you separate that a little and just kind of go through the first part especially, and the racial part of it is no good, but outside of it, I think certain things are put in there to stop people like me from reading it. So anyway, that's my opinion.
So that's the Urantia book for people if they want to pick that up. And you're very well read. You read a lot of books. You've had your experiences as well. So it's not just that you read books and you're sitting at home reading. It's not just that you're researching on the internet. It's not just that you had experiences. You had all these things, and you do your healing work. You heal people. So this is really good. And I had a wonderful session with you that was amazing. And
thank you. It's a pleasure working with you.
I highly recommend Barry. He's got a great heart, and I think that anybody can feel Barry's great heart. Whatever else,
thanks, John.
Whatever you think of his ideas, and I hope that you think well of his ideas, because I'm just open to figuring out what's going on. And Barry has tons and tons and tons of knowledge and experience. He's read a lot of books that I've never read, so it's like I want to learn from Barry. And I hope that people will always keep an open mind when they hear information that they've never heard before. You know, if you're at McDonald's and you're scrolling your phone and you come upon something about UFOs or aliens, ETs, whatever, multidimensional, extra dimensional beings, don't just say, "Oh, that's nonsense." Just check it out. Maybe it's worth looking at. Go see a sci-fi movie. Maybe there's some real intel in a sci-fi movie. So Barry Littleton,
tons of it.
yeah, lots of disclosure in these movies. So Barry Littleton, I love that your last name is Littleton because it's like this really humble last name. But you're a big heart. You're like Barry, big-hearted Littleton. It's a perfect balance. So my friend, I hope we can get together in real life, do some field research sometime, and have a hilarious and fun time out on the terrain one day. And because we don't live that far from each other, we're both in the middle of the country trying to balance out all the nonsense. And you and I are like the I don't know what do you call that, the fulcrum, the fulcrum and we're doing our best to discern what makes sense to us, and then we're just doing our best, just like everybody else is. Everyone's doing their best. So I love you. You're amazing. And yes, you were about to say something.
No, I was just saying, next time, I know we're out of time, but next time we get together,
yeah,
I wanted to talk with you about those pictures I had sent you, which are called the Chad Big Basin Dragonfly drones.
okay,
And they've got these self-activating symbols on them, and supposedly it came from somewhere called the Carrot Laboratory in Silicon Valley. But I think that those devices, they were exposed for whatever reason, sub-frequency disruption allowed those to be seen. I think they're back engineered on something that's been in our atmospheres a long time. And when it comes to some of the theories of terraforming that you're very familiar with, I'd like you to take a look at that and see if maybe those originals could have something to do with terraforming that went on here whenever, just a part of it. I think it's just good food for thought. You know what I mean? I mentioned that to Jessica on that show. I said, I'll ask Jock. So next time we get together, just take a look at it. Tell me what you think. You know what I mean? Just if it's a possibility, these different ways that these civilizations could have terraformed Earth.
That's a cool idea. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of possibilities, and I remember being in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, which I think is a late stage terraforming, continent building project. The pyramids are not like the pyramids in Egypt and Central America and South America, where they're set on the earth. They're part of the landscape in Bosnia. So it was amazing to be there for 23 months and to diagnose this ancient building that they did of the landscape itself. So it's like, yeah, I wonder how they did all this stuff. And I have a feeling that they were using sound and different frequencies to help them. They weren't using wheelbarrows and shovels, that's for sure. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to you too, my friend. Sorry, I'm out of time here, but yeah.
All right. Yeah,
you appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a total joy to have you on, Barry. And I know you got a client coming up here and you're going to help somebody else at 4:00, and God bless you.
Hey, thank you. Sorry I got to run right away so quick, but it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I spent too much time talking at the beginning before we went on the air. So,
dude, we could have talked for 100 hours, so we did well to keep it down to below 2. So have a great day with your client, and I love you, man. My heart goes out to you.
Hey, thank you. Same to you, my friend. Thank you for having me on, and thank you to your audience and everybody. And I look forward to talking to you again. Got a lot of respect for you, and I love the work you're doing. So definitely, let's keep in touch, my friend.
Yeah, I love the work you're doing too. You're an engine. You and Jessica are like two Energizer bunnies, peas in a pod. It's amazing. So keep going, man.
She just puts up with my clowning.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks, Jonathan, man.
All right, man. We need that good comedy energy. We need that in such a serious matrix. Okay.
Oh, definitely. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
All right, man. Take care.
Okay. Hey, you have a good night. All right. A good day, actually. Still a little bit.
Yeah.